The church today finds itself operating in a situation where there is very little love in the world, where there is a lot of hatred and a lot of competing and opposing forces. So it is important that we understand the dynamics involved in this kind of situation, so that we may be able to understand what to do exactly when we are faced with such scenarios. So to start us off, I'm looking at hatred. And when I look at the world today, I think hatred looks like a really complex and a deeply grounded problem that manifests itself in various ways. And it is very easy to see personal animosities, social divisions, racial discrimination, religious intolerance, and even large-scale conflicts, like we see the wars between nations and societies. The causes of hatred are multifaceted, and they range from historical grievances and political power struggle to economic disparities and cultural misunderstanding. Often hatred arises from fear, ignorance, or perceived threats to one's identity or way of life. So it's very easy to find people hating others for no reason. People just hating others because they have learned to hate the others because they found their community hating them. And this problem becomes very difficult because it affects the quality of life everywhere. It distorts happiness, and it makes it very difficult for people to coexist and cooperate on important issues of their own progress and development. So the effects of hatred are far-reaching because they contribute to violence, discrimination, and lack of empathy between individuals and groups. Hatred can erode social cohesion, it can foster conflict, and it can prevent meaningful dialogue. And in extreme cases, as I have noted, hatred can lead to war, genocide, and other atrocities. Although there is, we can say that, however, despite its destructive nature, we see many efforts around the world to address and reduce hatred. And these efforts sometimes focus on fostering understanding, promoting tolerance, and encouraging empathy. Their efforts through education, dialogue, and promotion of human rights being employed as strategies in combating hatred. The idea is to build a more inclusive society and address the root causes of division as vital steps towards creating a world where people can coexist peacefully regardless of their differences. So in a world that sometimes seems divided, it is important for Christians and believers to recognize the value of compassion, open-mindedness, and respect for one another. Now, because I did mention opposition, I want to say that hatred and opposition are two powerful emotional and social responses that often intersect but are distinct in nature. They are not the same, but both can contribute to conflict and division. But they arise from different sources and they manifest in different ways. So understanding the relationship between hatred and opposition can be very helpful in addressing and mitigating their harmful effects in society. So as Christians, we need to delve a bit into defining these things, understanding them, and maybe trying to see how similar or different is hatred and opposition. So hatred, we say, is a deeply emotional response that involves intense feelings of animosity, anger, or hostility towards someone or something. And it goes beyond disagreement and often leads to a desire for harm or suffering for the object of hatred. Now, let us look at the key aspects of hatred here. Emotionally, it is intense. So emotional intensity. Hatred is often fueled by intense emotions, such as fear, jealousy, or perceived injustice. It can be completely irrational. It can cloud judgment and foster negative stereotypes. Hatred is dehumanizing. So dehumanization, the aspect. When hatred is involved, individuals or groups may view others as less human and undeserving of respect. This dehumanization can justify harmful behaviors like discrimination, violence, or even genocide. Hatred can be long-lasting and deeply rooted, because we have seen hatred can persist over time and across generations, often passed down through cultural, political, and social influences. And this is very destructive. The destructive impact of hatred, it tends to perpetuate a cycle of violence, retaliation, and suffering, often leaving lasting trauma in its wake. And if you can relate this to the situation in the Middle East, the hatred between the Jewish people and the Arabs. See, it can't allow for healthy living. The people there must learn to overcome hatred, otherwise it will destroy them. Because you cannot build a humane society by killing or destroying your opponents. You have to stop somewhere and seek for cooperative or ways in which you can live together through education, dialogue, and promotion of human rights and integrity as a way of combating the differences or the hatred. Now, opposition, on the other hand, is more neutral and rational. And you find groups or persons can disagree with another's beliefs, another's actions or decisions. And the opposition does not necessarily carry the emotional weight or desire for harm that hatred carries. So let us see some characteristics of opposition. Characteristics of opposition include disagreement with hostility. So opposition can be rooted in difference of opinion, ideology, or perspective. But it does not have to involve the emotional intensity of hatred. Opposition is constructive, can be either constructive or destructive. Opposition, when it is constructive, includes offering alternative solutions or ideas. Or it can be destructive, where you just thwart or hinder progress without constructive input. In opposition, there is rational debate. Opposition is often on a basis for discussion. You can debate and dialogue. So it encourages engagement and understanding of different perspectives. And opposition is not always personal, because it may focus on ideas, policies, or behaviors rather than targeting individuals as the object of dislike. What is the relationship then between hatred and opposition? While hatred and opposition are distinct, they are sometimes interconnected. Opposition leading to hatred. In certain situations, opposing views or actions can escalate into hatred if one side feels disrespected, threatened, or marginalized. This is particularly true when opposition leads to perceived harm or injustice. Hatred can fuel opposition. So hatred can intensify opposition to the point where a rational discourse is replaced with aggression or violence. In these cases, opposition may not be about ideas anymore, but about defeating or harming the perceived enemy. Constructive opposition vis-a-vis destructive hatred. Ideally, opposition can be expressed in a constructive manner, fostering dialogue and growth. However, when opposition turns into hatred, it becomes a force that stifles cooperation and resolution, creating further division. So how does hatred appear, or how does opposition appear? Let us look at political situations. In politics, opposition to certain policies can be rational and a necessary part of democratic processes. However, when oppositions turn into hatred, for example, based on partnership or ideological divides, it can lead to polarization, misinformation, and social unrest. In social movements, social opposition to systemic inequality can be a driving force for change, such as civil rights movement or efforts for gender equality. But when faced with hatred or violent resistance, such movements may struggle to make progress. Now, in cultural and religious conflicts, cultural and religious opposition can lead to productive exchange of ideas. However, when it turns into hatred, as seen in extreme nationalism or sectarian violence, can create deep rifts within society and even escalate into war. So how do you combat hatred and opposition? To reduce the harmful impact of hatred and opposition, Christians may need to integrate several strategies and employ them, like promote understanding and dialogue by encouraging open conversations that foster empathy and understanding, so that you can help to address the root causes of opposition before it turns into hatred. And through education also, providing education on diverse perspectives, cultures, and histories can counteract prejudice and misconceptions that fuel hatred. Through conflict resolution, conflict mediation, and negotiation skills are crucial for addressing opposition without resorting to hostility or violence. Then we must emphasize common ground, focus on shared values and goals, so that to help bridge divides and promote collaboration rather than division. While opposition is often natural and necessary part of human interaction, hatred is a more destructive force that can lead to a long-term harm. By fostering more mutual understanding and respect, societies can reduce both hatred and unproductive opposition and create a more harmonious world.